I don't like saying it. You don't like hearing it. It's Monday, but I've got some good news for you. That means another new episode of Hornets Daily. Welcome into your one stop shop for all things Charlotte Hornets. As always, we're presented by the good people over at Fan Arc, and I'm your host, Vance Ballard. But you know by now, you can call me VB. Want to thank everybody for joining in today. Be sure, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, leave a like and a comment down in the comments section. Always fun to watch you guys interact in the chat and get to interact with you down there as well as we continue to build this Hornets Daily family here on the show. Quite a few things buzzing around the Queen City this weekend as the newcomers have officially decided their jersey numbers. Well, most of them, that is. There's some very interesting and difficult questions to answer about the roster and the cut down that is looming in that regard. What impact is the defense actually going to have on the Hornets this season? How big of a problem is that end of the floor really going to be? We're going to flesh that out a little bit and discuss that on today's show as well. And move over Tyrese Halliburton. The NBA now has a new most overrated player. It's July. The lists are flying around. The clickbaits are out there. And a new report has come out, and one of the Charlotte Hornets has been listed as the most overrated player in the NBA. I'm sure you can guess which one, but we'll talk about that later on in today's show. Like I said, quite a bit of things buzzing around the Queen City over the weekend, and if there's one thing you guys know we don't do here, it's beat around the bush. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, as we get closer to the final roster being announced, the preseason coming, and the regular season on the way, we're starting to learn more about who's going to be on that roster and the newcomers that are on it as well. They have officially announced their jersey numbers. Like I say, most of them anyway, as Pat Connaughton, Colin Sexton, and Drew Peterson are still undecided and have yet to announce which number they're going to be wearing for Charlotte this season. The rest of the rookies and the new additions in the offseason have chosen what numbers they're going to be wearing. Now, there's no changes from the rookies in terms of what they wore in Summer League. We'll still see their same numbers, as Khan will be in number 7. Liam McNeely will be wearing 33. Sion will stay in number 4, and Kalkbrenner in number 11. The newest addition to the Hornets, Antonio Reeves, he'll be donning number 12 for Charlotte this season. Mason Plumlee, the returning veteran, will be wearing number 22, and Spencer Dinwiddie, he'll be wearing number 26. Little fun fact about that, that'll be the first time in franchise history that the number 26 has been worn by a Charlotte player. Just an interesting piece of information about some things that don't really matter, but it's fun to know exactly what number the new rookies are going to be wearing. You can go out and order your jerseys now. If you're a Spencer Dinwiddie fan, you can get you a 26, whatever that may be. If you're looking for a new Plumlee jersey, there's number 22 going to be floating around for you now, too. So I know it doesn't mean a whole lot to have these numbers announced, but it is still kind of just a fun piece of information to know, something to take back to the water cooler if you'd like. And maybe, just maybe in a weird way, kind of gives these rookies and these newcomers a sense of comfortability, like they now are officially part of the team. Their number has been solidified, their spot. Maybe that might be me overthinking it, but you never know. It could be, it could have some sort of impact on the mindset and mentality of the players as they now have their official number to wear in the NBA or with their new team. Speaking of things that matter, however, we're going to talk now about some major roster decisions that still loom, some questions still to be answered, and an inevitable cut down that we know is on the way, as the Hornets currently have 16 guys under contract and 2 contracts still left to potentially be guaranteed, that being Musa Diabate and Daquan Jeffries. Now, we all know, I think we're all in agreement here on the show and even out there as the rest of the Hornets fan base, that Diabate is probably going to be on the roster, not only on the roster, but potentially a starter, if not that, a major role player. So I think that contract is definitely going to get guaranteed. We can go ahead and fill that spot there. Daquan Jeffries, however, that's a name we've already mentioned on the show a few times as someone who's probably on the way out the door. It just doesn't seem like there's a real good spot for him, a really good fit on this roster that's already got to be cut down. So Jeffrey's more than likely going to be one of the ones that have to go on the spot. That still leaves two other names, not potentially two other names that have to be cut. Now, potentially, Nick Smith Jr. is one of those names, another one we've mentioned on the show before. He too seems to have gotten kind of mixed up in the logjam of guards on this team, on this roster right now, and it doesn't seem like there's a fit for him either. So, more than likely, two of the three that have to go are going to be Nick Smith Jr. and Daquan Jeffries. Now, that leaves couple questions up in the air for who that third guy could be. We've mentioned the potential of Josh Green on this show not being there. But as you sit down and really look at things, this roster needs as much defense as they can get at all the positions. And Josh Green is a 3-and-D player. He's good on the wing, guarding other wings, keeping them from getting to their spot, staying in front of them. He's a proven defender in the NBA. We know he can do that. So now at this point, waiving him or getting rid of him in any way may be a little bit risky, could be too much to ask because he's probably going to be needed while a young rookie like Sion James develops and comes to understand what his role is going to be and what it's like actually playing defense against NBA talent night in and night out. So I'm not sure that Josh Green is the third guy to be moved now, and it may be the chopping block for Pat Connaughton at this point, which also is a tough decision. I know he was just added not long ago, just a few weeks back. He was acquired with along with 2 second-round picks from the Bucks, but it does leave a tough decision. He could be the one on the chopping block. That would cost the Hornets a much needed potential veteran voice or presence in the locker room on the roster, but I'm not sure that can be enough to keep him around when you need somebody like a Josh Green who's a little more athletic than Connaughton, a little younger, and has a little more capability on the defensive end. Not that Pat Connaughton's a bad defender, it just Josh Green, in my opinion, has a little more upside on that end of the floor. So I think, unfortunately, when it comes down to the inevitable roster purge that has to happen, Pat Connaughton may be on the chopping block. Could be wrong about that, but I do think it's going to more than likely come down to Nick Smith Jr., Daquan Jeffries, and probably Pat Connaughton no longer being there. Love to know what you guys think there. Leave that down in the comment section on today's show. Let me know who do you guys think's on the chopping block as the Hornets do have no choice but to purge their roster down to 15. Once they get there, we'll have a question in terms of something we were already just talking about, defense. That's going to be a major question when the roster is fully finalized, and even before. Right now, it's already a question. How big of a problem is the defense actually going to be in Charlotte come the regular season? Now we know everything that's happened this summer. The team has addressed their shooting woes realistically in abundance, it would seem. But there's a lot of experts, you guys watching along, and really even me, to be honest, that don't feel the same way about the defensive end of the floor. Zach Lowe being one of those experts, he predicted on his podcast a few days ago that the Hornets were going to be a bottom 8 team in terms of defense in the NBA. He sees, and he even had them in the same category as the Washington Wizards and the Brooklyn Nets. Now I think we're probably a little better than those two teams just on paper and based on talent around um, the roster and the stars already on the team. I'm not sure the comp to the Wizards and the Nets is necessarily fair, but Zach Lowe does feel that the defense is going to potentially be a bottom 8 defense in the league. I don't know if it's quite that big of a problem, but there are still a lot of questions, a lot of things looming. Definitely the big question this season is going to be the defense, because there's questions and concerns surrounding all of the rookies. To be honest, Sion James probably the one with the least amount of questions. Kalkbrenner would be next, and just because of his presence in the paint, but he's got some questions about what he can do on the perimeter, his footwork, his lateral quickness. Sion James, of course, he's still going to have to develop into a true NBA defender and learn what it's actually like to be on an NBA talent, probably on one of, if not the best offensive player on the other team when he's on the floor night in and night out. He's going to have to get used to that, and that could take some time as well. I mentioned Kalkbrenner. Liam McNeely also showed some defense, some promise on the defensive end throughout the summer league. I know he didn't play in every game, but in the games he did play, he answered a lot of questions, surprised a lot of people, and kind of made it known that he was here in the NBA to get better and play some defense. He said we know coming from Danny Hurley's UConn team, toughness and defense was hammered into his brain in the 1 year he had in college, and Charles Lee is only going to continue to build and shape that mindset. So I'm not sure that he's going to be a huge problem. I think he's actually going to be quite a surprise, especially early on in his first couple seasons. This one specifically, I think he's going to be a lot more useful on the defensive end than people think. That still leaves a lot of questions. Other places, those are just the rookies. The big question, of course, as we've mentioned, is that exact position, the big. What what is that going to look like on the defensive end of the floor? We know that there's not a lot of faith in the five position coming into this offseason. I'm going to be honest. I don't love the centers on the roster. I've hammered on the table over and over on this show for the Hornets to add a big man some way or another. Not Mason Plumlee. No disrespect to him, but that's not the addition that we were talking about here. But they have yet to do so, and it don't really show any signs of doing that. They've got to purge the roster as opposed to continue to add to it. So there's not a lot of faith at the five position, and I think it's going to throw Musa and Ryan Kalkbrenner into the fire pretty quickly. Now we know kind of what we've seen from Musa early in his career is he was a high energy guy who loves to crash the glass and go get a lot of rebounds, but we're going to need to see a big development and kind of quickly from him in the paint as he'll be relied on heavily down there. And Kalkbrenner, he too will be thrown right to the Wolves if the lineup stays the way it is. He's going to have to be forced to play some important minutes in the paint. And again, those questions about his lateral quickness, his ability to guard out the big man out on the perimeter, that's going to be something he's got to figure out quickly. What's he going to look like in the pick and roll? All of these things are going to be questions that are going to have to be answered in the summertime, and tasks for Charles Lee to develop and his staff to continue to develop. We also know there's not a whole lot of size at the four position as well. We know Tajon Salon looked a lot better. He looked very much improved in the summer league in his limited time out there in Las Vegas. But again, I mentioned that's not night in, night out NBA talent. We know the pressure that is on the former six overall pick to continue to develop and show why he was that pick. So, especially on the defensive end of the floor, it's going to be interesting to see if that development, if the summer workout routine that he has been so proud of and has looked so promising in his time on the floor so far, can he keep that up? Can he continue to develop on defense again against high level NBA talent night in and night out? We know Miles Bridges, Grant Williams, again, we talked about him on Friday's show. He's probably not going to be back realistically until around Christmas time if they don't move him in the first place. I know some of you guys down in the chat think that he should be moved, think we have everything he can do. He can't really play the five on defense just because of size. He can, but it's a small lineup. We've got the three centers already, and now the shooting in abundance. So there are some of you guys down in the chat thinking that Grant Williams could be on the move, but even if he's not, it'll be Christmas before he's back to play defense. Miles Bridges more than capable at the four to play some defense, to play on the defensive end as well, and we know how good he is offensively, but it's going to be more so behind Bridges when he comes out to catch a break, to get some rest. What's that four position going to look like on the defensive end in that regard? I do think Shalon is not, that wasn't a fluke out in Las Vegas. I really think he's going to be ready to play both ends of the floor and have very important minutes in the regular season and throughout. I think he's going to continue to develop and show why he was chosen, and that the long-term development plan for him in last year's draft was the right move, and it's going to continue to pay off as we develop through the summer and through the regular season. Now, back to the five, Mason Plumlee. I didn't mention him yet, so I just looked over and saw that name there. He too, I don't think is somebody we can rely heavily on. I'm not sure he was really even brought in to be much more than a veteran presence a leader in the locker room, somebody who can kind of get the guys up and keep them on the right path, on the right track for a lot of these younger members of the Hornets team. But with the way things are shaping up, he too could be very important. He could be asked to come in and play a big role on the floor on both ends of it, but defensively specifically, he could have to play some vital minutes down the line. All this is going to be very exciting to see what Charles Lee and his defensive minded coaching staff have in store for the development of these young players on that end of the floor throughout the rest of the summer and going into the regular season. How much can he get out of all these guys? We do know about what he does on that end of the floor and the level of importance he focuses on defense. So it's going to be exciting to watch him probably end up getting more than he's supposed to out of all these guys on that end of the floor, especially with the hyper competitive mindset of all the young guys that the Hornets have brought in this summer. Anyway, speaking of mindsets and hyper competitiveness, we've got LaMelo Ball coming up, folks. As I teased earlier, a new overrated player list, most overrated player list in the NBA, has come out, and our very own point guard is sitting at the top of it. Bleacher Report's Zach Buckley put out his top 5 most overrated players in the NBA, and as I mentioned, move over Tyrese Halliburton, LaMelo Ball. It's his turn to sit on that throne. Buckley says that LaMelo is the new holder of the title because there's, quote, more sizzle than substance in his play. Buckley also cited his poor shooting from last season, just 53% overall true shooting percentage, but what was a career high in scoring, averaging just over 25 points a game for LaMelo. Of course, he had to mention, as everyone does, as we know is an issue, the health problems for LaMelo. It is not a great look that he has played less basketball games than Zion Williamson. I'll be honest about that. But that is also something that Buckley mentioned in his report where he rated LaMelo the most overrated player in the league. Lastly, he said the lack of offensive support can only forgive so much inefficiency. Now, some heavy words coming from Buckley as he does put LaMelo high up on this list, but I truly believe that this won't get as much backlash as you might think. Now, I'm not a fan of LaMelo being the most overrated player in the league. I don't think he's quite to that level. I'm not sure anyone on this team can be that yet, but if I especially don't think that LaMelo is the most overrated player in the league. I know people have their own opinions of LaMelo as a person, but I'm not sure that as a player he's anywhere close to the most overrated. But like I say, I don't think it's going to get a lot of backlash in terms of the report. I think the fan base is probably going to be close to 50-50 on this, at least the people I've talked to about it already. Some of them don't necessarily hate it. Some of them are defending their guy LaMelo, which makes sense as well. But like I say, I know the fan base has their own opinions of LaMelo as a person, not necessarily a player. But those personal opinions can ooze over into the opinion of him as a player. So it may be people out there in the fan base don't necessarily disagree with him being the most overrated player. However, I definitely do. And I think that this season is going to prove me right, especially since this is definitely the most talent that LaMelo has had around him coming into the season. For now, he's coming into it relatively healthy. He should be even healthier if things continue to go the correct way this summer. Again, he'll have shooters around him, he'll have playmakers around him. He'll be able to prove that to go back to the quote that the offensive inefficiency was due to lack of talent around him. This will be his best chance to prove that is the reason. He'll have an ability, much more chances to be an efficient player with guys like Colin Sexton, Spencer Dinwiddie, Con Knipple, Liam McNeely, and all of the new additions around him. Even the potential for lobs to Ryan Cockburner. We know how good of a passer LaMelo already is on the pick and roll. If him and Cockburner can get that relationship developed, then absolutely look out below because the big man will fly high, no questions. So therefore, like I say, this is his best chance to increase his efficiency and prove that prove something we all already know. He's not the most overrated player in the NBA. He is exactly what we think he is. He is a star, just needing the supporting cast around him to be a little more filled out, to be a little more productive, and to be better shooters. And that is what this roster has done, has assembled so far with Jeff Peterson's move in the offseason. Now, I'm sure knowing LaMelo not knowing him obviously, but knowing what we know about LaMelo and how he reacts to things, where I'm sure he's not bothered by any of this at all, if he's even seen it to this point. But if he has, this does provide quite a good bit of bulletin board material for the point guard headed into the regular season if he needs that type of motivation. Again, I'm not certain that's the type of guy LaMelo is, but if he is, this is a great piece to add to the old locker room wall and put up there as you look at it in training throughout the summer and going into the regular season. A lot of questions still left to be answered. Again, a lot of buzz going around the Queen City. That's going to wrap us up here for today's show. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining in. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave a like and a comment down in the comment section. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Hornets Daily.